love going to Broadway shows, but can't go now because Broadway's closed. Join tour guide Tim and Belasco too as they bring Broadway history to you. Grab your Broadway passport for what's in store on your Virtual Broadway Tour.
This week's theater, the Cort, is an architectural beauty that most theatergoers don't even know exists, as it's tucked in the northeast corner of the theater district just above Times Square. And if you've ever joined us for one of our tours, you've also never heard of it because it's not on any of our tours. Well, that changes today. The theater opened in 1912 and is one of only a few theaters designed by famous theater architect Thomas Lamb that are still standing in the Times Square area today. Lamb's inspiration for the facade was Le Petit Trianon, a chateau in Versailles, France. For the interior, he designed it in the grand style of Louis XVI, complete with a bust of Marie Antoinette in the lobby. The proscenium was noted for the lattice work that was backlit with amber glass, unparalleled on Broadway and a novelty at the time. The name upon the marquee has been there since it opened 108 years ago, named for original owner John Cort. Cort was a theater impresario who started his theatrical career in Seattle before heading east. It's believed that at one point in the height of his career, he single-handedly owned the most legitimate theaters in America, with the Cort being his Broadway outpost. Thankfully, the Cort's interior and exterior were designated New York City landmarks in November 1987, ensuring its place in Broadway history. We aren't even 1/4 of the way through our Virtual Broadway Tour adventure, and already you've heard me mention superstitions many times. By nature, theater people, including producers, are a superstitious lot. With the average musical costing around $15 million, producers want to pick a lucky theater that's a good fit for their show. Since the early 1900s, the concentration of Broadway theaters has always been clustered on the west side of Times Square. Over time, the handful of theaters that were scattered on the east side seemed to be less successful. Perhaps it was less foot traffic from theatergoers, perhaps it was the caliber of shows. Whatever the reason, the east side became known as the wrong side of Broadway. The Cort has had a varied superstitious history. It opened with Peg of My Heart, starring Lorette Taylor, which hit the century mark and then some, running 607 performances. James Dean and Jane Fonda both made their Broadway debuts here, and The Diary of Anne Frank was a big hit. Its early successes were mostly non-musicals. Interestingly, the longest running show at the theater was Doug Henning's The Magic Show. And with a few recent exceptions, the Cort has now sadly fallen back into its non-lucky ways with a string of short-lived productions. Hopefully, that'll change soon. 45th Street eventually became known as the Street of Hits, but in earlier Broadway lore, that nickname actually belonged to 48th Street on the east side of Times Square. Originally, this one block was packed with 5 Broadway theaters: the Playhouse, the Cort, the Norworth, the Vanderbilt, and the most creatively named of them all, the 48th Street Theater. As these 5 theaters rose from the ashes between 1911 and 1918, 48th Street was turned into a bustling theatrical landscape every evening. So, what happened to the others? 48th Street has the wildest demolition story. In August of 1955, the steel beam supporting the water tower had corroded and finally gave way, dropping 10,000 gallons of water and the entire water tank through the roof. In the top floor apartment next door, Mrs. Anna Berman and her son Arthur were seated next to the open window when they were doused with gallons of water. Thankfully, no one was injured, but the theater was demolished because of it. The Norworth, renamed the Belmont, eventually became a movie theater and was demolished in 1951. The Playhouse Theater was last known as the site of Springtime for Hitler in the original The Producers movie, before being demolished a year later for a commercial building. The Vanderbilt was demolished to make way for a parking lot, ironically designed by one of the most famous Broadway architects that we'll meet in a few weeks, which means the Cort, all these years later, is the last man standing on the block. Over time, with show after show coming and going, it doesn't provide much time for theater owners to make capital improvements to their theaters. Add to that the strict demands of restoring a landmark building, and it makes large-scale updates nearly impossible. The Cort, currently 108 years old, is finally getting a much-needed update. The small interior spaces provide a challenge to expand bathroom facilities and stage space, so a modern annex is being added next door to the theater. How does one afford such precious real estate? In a record-breaking deal, the Schuberts were able to sell the air above their theater for $41 million to the Rockefeller Group, who are building next to the Cort. As part of the deal, 19,000 square feet will be set aside for the theater's expansion. Not familiar with air rights? It's a complicated facet of real estate, but basically the landmark status of theaters doesn't allow them to build higher than the original scale of the theater. So the city struck up a deal that they are allowed to sell that unused air to other locations in the theater district. Wild, right? The next time you walk through the theater district, make sure to take in a deep breath. It's some of the most expensive air in New York City.
What up, world? Happy Saturday night / day on Broadway. Thank you for joining us at a new different time of 12 noon instead of our typical 6 p.m. I hope you've made the adjustment. Welcome. Part of our Virtual Broadway Tour Series, every week we sit down live with someone who has worked at the theater we're featuring that week. And this week we're joined by the incredible Max Chernin from Bright Star at the Cort Theater, among other fancy shows that we'll talk about. For those that aren't familiar with me or Broadway Up Close, my name is Tim Dolan. I'm an actor and the owner of Broadway Up Close Walking Tours in New York City. For the past 10 years, our tours have unearthed fun facts, secrets, ghost stories, lots of history from the 41 Broadway theaters. My entire team, what I call my green team, are all actors and stage managers who are your windows into the world of all of this insanity of these old buildings. Last year, I opened a gift shop in the middle of Times Square, currently stationed in front of the Minskoff Theater at 45th Street. You might recognize it or notice it. Obviously, it's green because that's everything in my life is green. But it also has a 6-foot-tall Broadway sign of marquee letters. That's 150 light bulbs that we installed last year for a perfect little Instagram moment if you're in Times Square. Currently, we're closed. COVID-19 is ruining my life, but that's why we're here and hanging out virtually. In addition to the 5 exterior tours that we've offered for the past 10 years, this past fall, we opened our first interior Broadway theater inside Broadway's oldest theater, the Hudson. For more info on that and all the other things about my life, you can head to www.broadwayupclose.com. You shouldn't do that now. You should wait till after we're done talking to Max, and then you should look up my life. As I've said before, I never really envisioned a world of New York City without Broadway. To me, the two things are absolutely synonymous. And when that first usher got sick, I thought, oh God, okay, so maybe like a couple of weeks will be down and all right, sales will be rough and it'll be fine. And then it went on for a month and then 2 months. And now here we are like 5.5 months later, probably going to end up being a year of our lives. And so I realized I started missing, connecting with theater goers, seeing shows, seeing actors in the neighborhood. And so I thought, well, we'll bring it to you virtually. So we have our Virtual Broadway Tour Series to keep our love of Broadway alive in the meantime. I'm insane. We're doing all 41 theaters. It's 41 weeks of my life. We're starting with the oldest and we're moving forward in time chronologically. When I started, it sounded like, yeah, this will be so easy. This will be great. And here we are, week 8, the Cort. So far, so good. I hope you enjoyed this week, all the history, the fun facts. For those who've joined us for a tour, you've never heard about this theater because it's not on any of our tours. And maybe we'll find out why when we talk to Max. How is today going to work? For today's series, we'll learn about Max's theatrical journey, his time working at the Cort on Bright Star. If you have any questions as we go for him, for me, along the way, drop them in the comments. And while you're looking at that comment box now, I want you to drop in and say hi if you're watching us live and tell us where you're watching us from. And so, without further ado, join me in welcoming Broadway's Max Chernin.
Hey.
Oh, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
So good, thank you. Thanks for spending your Saturday noon time with us.
Yes, Saturday noon on Broadway, eh?
Correct. Yeah, that's a thing, right? Saturday noon on Broadway. Yeah, S.N.O.B. There you go.
Yeah,
you're fancy. Yeah. You're hired.
Yeah.
You're a marketing genius.
Thank you.
I was like, we're gonna have to call it Saturday S.N.O.B. Saturday morning on. No, I don't. It doesn't scan, but that's okay. How's your life? Tell us. before we like launch into questions and talk about the Cort and Bright Star and all of that,
Sure.
will you walk us through kind of like the history of your life? So in like only a couple of minutes. So,
Sure.
So like where you're from, where you first got exposed to theater, maybe where if you went to college for musical theater, and then we'll get to like shows and auditions and stuff like that.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah. So I grew up outside of Cleveland, Ohio, in Shaker Heights, Ohio.
Great.
And
Shaker Heights, Little Fires Everywhere, Shaker Heights, Ohio?
Everyone's very excited to talk about Little Fires Everywhere. Yeah. And it's
Is
a
it
cool
like
series.
that?
Yes, there are parts of it that are like that. Yeah, so it's a great community. There's a great arts component of the public education system there, which was amazing and a great way to kind of dive into theater. So I started at like a theater camp kind of situation that like my cousin went to. So I also went to the camp. And yeah, singing and acting was something that I was better at than sports, let's say.
And how old, like going to this camp, how old do you think you were if you had to guess?
6 or 7.
Okay,
8.
pretty young.
Yeah.
Really young. Okay.
Yeah. So then I started doing like the little youth theater productions, I was in like 3 different productions of Joseph over the course of,
Yeah.
And that kind of led to like going to a better camp. So I ended up going to Interlochen Arts Camp, which was really the first time that that both me and my parents were like, oh, there are other kids that are talented and like want to learn. And once you kind of are immersed in that, it kind of just elevates what you want to do. And then I was like, oh, I want to be an actor. I'm done with school. And when can I go do that? So, so I did more summer things. I went to a program at Carnegie Mellon and I went to a program at Northwestern. And so I like spent my summers at a conservatory program. And then
while still going to public high school during the year.
Yeah, which was like, and then like doing the shows there.
Sure.
So I was very fortunate to like have that, but it also was, distracting because I was like, oh, I've had a taste of what I want to do. When can I go?
You're like, oh, high school, that's still a thing we have to do. Great.
Right. So then I did like the whole jam with the like auditioning for colleges and things, which was a deal back then and is even an even bigger deal now. I mean, kids really go for it with
I was like right before even that. So like I was 2003 where you couldn't Google like where should I go to musical theater school. I grew up in Michigan and I didn't even know about Interlochen because there was no kids in our neighborhood who did it. And people are like, you're from Michigan. You did Interlochen your whole life. And you're like, no, I didn't realize that was a thing until like I got here. And everyone's like, well, why didn't you do that?
Right.
Yeah. Like the internet, you guys.
Right. I think my year was the first year that kids connected on Facebook. High school kids connected on Facebook. And and it was like kids that are applying to musical theater programs. And over the course of the year, everyone would be like, who's going to be at Michigan for this audition week? And you would like meet a kid there. And then 6 weeks later, people would be like, anyone here from Michigan? And someone would be like, I got waitlisted. And which was actually like a helpful tool to be like, oh, people have heard. I don't have to sit around waiting to hear anymore.
And that's wild to me. That is not what my college audition musical theater experience. It was just like you went and you knew nothing.
Exactly.
So then did you have... Okay, so you've Interlochen, you've done Carnegie Mellon, you've done these programs, you've been around these people, the internet. Did you have like in a perfect world, these are my top 5 schools, and in a perfect world, I get into this one?
Yeah, I had I kind of narrowed it down to a couple schools. I was like CCM, Michigan, Ithaca, and Carnegie Mellon. And Carnegie Mellon was like my dream. And I ended up not doing, I was waitlisted there. And I got into CCM, which is amazing. But at the time, I had some kind, I had like a stigma about going there because it was for dancers and it was like musical theater. And Carnegie Mellon, the musical theater majors have the same curriculum as the acting majors. And I was an actor. So like, I wanted that, And I had gone to the summer program, yada, yada, yada. anyway. So I
okay, so like 18-year-old you gets your like wait list from Carnegie Mellon, and you're like, my life is over. I will never work again.
Yeah, my life is over. And in a twist, I actually grew up with a couple other Broadway people. I grew up with Cort and Fankhauser. So Corey Cott and I drove to Pittsburgh together to do our auditions, and Corey ended up getting in.
And he got in, right? Oh God!
And I was like, I'm so happy for you, Corey.
Congratulations!
I'm really happy. Congrats! This is my dream.
It's fine. I got waitlisted, so it'll probably still work out. Yeah, we'll both be roommates. Oh,
and things have been really hard for him since. So
correct. God,
no, I love Corey.
Mellon,
he's a sweetheart. Yeah. So yeah, I ended up at CCM, which was great. It's in state for Ohio, so that ended up being like a smart thing to do, to go to an in-state school. And I was there for 4 years, and it was it was great training, but it's also just so intense. And like what no one tells you is like, oh, you're going to do this training, but you also are like trying to learn who you are as a person and an adult. It's like, looking back, I'm like, oh, from 18 to 22, someone was asking me to dig deep within myself. And like, I don't even know if I knew who I was,
Correct. They're like, bring this to the table. And you're like, I don't know that I've ever felt that. I'm 19 years old.
Right. So, I'm very grateful for it and things, but sometimes I do think about like, oh, maybe I should have just gone for something normal and then like done my master's somewhere. But I wanted to do that, and it was amazing. I have some amazing friends, and CCM led to, we do a showcase in New York City.
Yep.
And that's an amazing way to meet people. And
what did you sing in your showcase?
I sang Holiday from American Idiot.
Sure.
And I sang a very obscure song called The Promise of Greatness.
Promise of Greatness from
Two Guys Naked from the Waist
Down. Really?
Yeah, I did.
It's a great song, I think.
Yeah, it's like a little I
haven't heard it in years. Yeah,
song. And it was kind of funny because the song's like, I had the promise of greatness. I was going to be great, and then I smoked a joint and dropped out of school. And so, for whatever reason, I was like, this is funny. I'm going to do it.
And that worked out. Agents responded at your showcase?
Yeah, it was good. It was surprising. You just don't know, it's like, I didn't have like some of my class. I went to school with like John Riddle and Alicia Delorieux and, my classmates.
Some heavy hitters.
Yeah, they worked in the summer. They had their equity cards. They like had all these things, and no one wanted to put me in the back of the Muni, like singing whatever,
Right.
And so I was like, all right, Max, what are you going to do? And my plan A was like, get coffee with everyone I knew in the city, which is like Michael Casera, because he's from Cleveland, so like get coffee with Michael. Yeah. And
for those who don't know, that he's a casting director.
He's a casting director.
Yeah.
And, my plan B was you get one meeting with an agent, and I was lucky to meet with a couple and ended up signing. And it was an interesting road after that.
It's fascinating talking to so many people who have done so many great things. This is my favorite part, because it's like your formative years of like what you think it's going to be, and then you start to get into it, and then what it is, right?
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating thing. The pressure, especially because of the internet and the awareness of, oh, I'm getting in, waitlisted, all of that is great. But then there's the added pressure of like, you're all, being, shepherded into the same gates. And if for some reason everyone else gets in the gates and you're like, well, I'm over here. Right. Like, I look just like, I'm just as talented as you guys, but like my gate's over here. Yeah. And so it's a fascinating thing. And then you get to New York City, and it eases a little bit as people figure out their lives and settle in and book shows or don't book shows. But it is that moment of like, let's all go to New York City and let's all wear our best color clothing and jewel tone shirts and sing our songs and hope this works out. Yeah. It's it's wild. Okay, so it works out. So then fast forward, you start auditioning.
Yeah.
When does Sunday in the Park with George? Sunday in the Park was before Bright Star, right?
It was after.
Oh, it was after. Bright Star was first.
Yeah, Bright Star was first.
I love that. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it took a while. Like honestly, it took a while for like things to pick up.
And what do you describe as a while?
2.5 years.
Okay.
Okay, here's the comparison. Are you ready for this? When I
Yes.
got to the city, my two best friends from home were both in Newsies on Broadway. Like Corey Cott and Ben Fankhauser were on Broadway.
And not like random Newsy 4 from Brooklyn in the back.
No,
like
the
Newsy.
And so like I was so excited. It was like so exciting, but like I was just like their little ginger friend, like at the Tony party, backstage, like hanging out, you know, and like it was just, and then my classmates, 4 of them went into Book of Mormon on the road. One got a Chase commercial. One went on the Evita tour. One was, Alicia was standing by for Raven Simone in Sister Act on Broadway. And I was still non-equity. Like I was waking up at 6 a.m. in Inwood and taking the express train to go stand outside of Pearl. But you know what? Like I was grateful for that. So it felt like a while, even though in reality, like 2.5 years to like get a break is nothing. But in my world, it felt like an eternity.
Everything. Yes. Yeah. And for those that are watching, and we have some people that have said hi that follow us a lot, that are here a lot. Hi, you guys. This part is so interesting because some people are like, I don't know. They asked me to put a tape on. I put a tape in and they were like, do you want to be in Head Over Heels? And they were like, sometimes it's hard, but a lot of times it's really easy. And so it's good to hear the insanity and the ups and downs and what to someone feels like an eternity. And other people are like, it's just a couple of years. You're great.
Right.
Okay. So then you go in for Bright Star and maybe things go differently.
Yeah. So Bright Star wasn't even on my radar. Like I was busy doing a workshop of a off-Broadway show called Brooklynite with Michael Mayer, big time director. And I was like, oh my God, this is my break. This is my break. You know, Michael Mayer did Spring Awakening and Hedwig.
Everything.
And I had to come late to rehearsal because I had this audition for Bright Star at the Old Globe. And I was like, why is this happening? Why did my agent schedule this? And I go to my audition. I'm the first one of the day. And we're waiting for someone named Steve to arrive. And I'm like, oh God, who is this? I haven't even looked at any of the who wrote it or everything. In walks Steve Martin.
You're like,
and I am just like, oh great, like I can't, like I'm not gonna get this, and I'm just gonna have to let it go. And I go in and I sing a bluegrass song from a show that I did on a boat that's docked in the Ohio River about Jesus called Cotton Patch Gospel.
I mean, obviously, we all have one of those songs tucked in the back of our book.
I was like, I'll just sing this. I already know it. And then I did the sides for a character named Daryl, who is like the office assistant that Jeff Blumenkrantz ended up playing. And the whole part of the scene is that he doesn't have the time of day for this character and he has to get going. And so I was that character that day. I literally had to get out of the room and I just did that and left and got the part. And and so that I was like, oh my God, wow, it's almost better to go into an audition when you don't have the time to be there.
Yeah, and you didn't know Steve Martin was going to be there.
Right. My gosh. So
then you get it. You go Brooklynite, workshop finishes. You go to Old Globe.
Yeah, go to Old Globe. And that really was, they had done a workshop in the city that I wasn't a part of, but they added more people for this production to move the house. And so we had a 6-week rehearsal process in San Diego. And that was basically another workshop, I would say. Because this time they were figuring out, I think we spent maybe 4 weeks just working on the transitions, how to get this house in, how to switch. So for those, if you've seen Bright Star, it goes between the 1920s and the 1940s.
Right. And
the first hour of the show, Walter Bobby wanted it to just keep going and going and going without applause. So that's what we spent like 4 weeks on, trying to make this machine just like literally spin around and around and throw you in and out. And and our choreographer, Josh Rhodes, who's amazing, really just like, we were just working sketches and drafts of this stuff and songs and scenes. And it felt like a true, like workshop room until we arrived at some version of the show that we ran for a little bit in San Diego. Yeah.
That's crazy. I'm obsessed. I love the slight jadedness of we're hired to just move the house, which is because there are these moments where you're like, oh, it's so creative. It's so great. There's Steve Martin. And they're like, Max, but could you hit that spike mark just a little more right on? And you're like, great. Here I am. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah. The way it was phrased to us is we were there to expand the world, which is true, and to understudy and to move the house and to,
yes. My favorite is in the regional world. In a lot of regional houses, there's equity clause that if you're a union member in the ensemble, you can't just show up to move a transition piece or move a set piece.
Correct.
You have to be part of the scene.
Correct.
And so I didn't know this rule forever, but I was like, how funny that choreographer had me come in, do a pirouette, and then push off the chair. And my friend was like, well, yeah, you have to dance.
Right.
Because
otherwise they have to pay you.
They have to pay you to move that chair. But if you're dancing, if you do a pirouette while you move it, they don't, you're like, I haven't got to learn the rules. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So then it moves to Broadway.
Yeah. So then we took a year off and we did one reading of it in New York. And then we did Kennedy Center was our pre-Broadway.
Okay.
And then we went to Broadway. Yeah. And an interesting thing, when we met for that reading, Steve Martin walked up to me and told me he had written a tiny little part named Max that was kind of like a foil to the young couple. AJ Shively and Hannah Ellis played the romantic leads, and I was like the dorky guy in the book shop that was trying to get the girl. So I had a part named I think it was just my name was a placeholder, and then they decided that it was okay, which is cool. And so
there will always be a Max in Bright Star, and that's you.
Yeah, so that's me. Yeah,
Still
there's always a Max. So we did DC, which is super cool. The Kennedy Center is just an iconic place to work. And we really the thing is with a show like Bright Star, it was an idea in 2013, 2014, and it was on Broadway in 2015, 2016. And so what you're doing is you're condensing a lot of time to that, writers normally, there's no normal timeline, but you think about a gestation period for a show, it can be 10 years, it can be a long time. So we were making massive changes, but we had so much money waiting around, you know what I mean? And when you make a massive change, then you got to build a set, then you got to do this, and you got to change the costumes, and then you got to hire everyone to come in and relight it and, rescore it. And so it just becomes, the faster you fast track things, when you make a change, if you change 3 minutes, that's 2 days of work. Eternity. You know what I mean? It's 2 days of work to put it into the show. So it was, I think I've spent more of my life in tech for the train scene in Bright Star than anything else. I think I've spent probably, because I went and did the tour and I've done, a couple, we said it a bunch of times. I think I've probably spent 5 or 6 days of my life lighting the train scene.
That sounds that's I think you should put that at the bottom of your resume. You're really great at train scene lighting if you're looking. Caitlin has a question. She says, "Hi Max, your story is awesome. Did you need to re-audition between workshop and Broadway?"
Yes, I did. And that was terrifying. They wanted to see what I did with the roles that I ended up understudying.
Okay.
So, and I knew for this audition that I had to prove that I could be on Broadway, basically. Yeah. And I was grateful that I had met Walter Bobby and I knew kind of what his expectations were. So I was off book. I went in to cover AJ, Billy, and to cover Jeff Blumenkrantz, Daryl, which I read back in the day. So I had a costume change. I had props. I staged everything. Wow. And I just wanted to go, I just gave them a performance because I just wanted them to say, okay, Max can do this. And luckily they said yes. But it was a lot of us had to do it, and the cast changed a little bit from San Diego, which was sad, and they cut characters and things like that. But yeah, that is a nerve-wracking thing, especially when someone was like dangling my Broadway debut.
Correct. You're just like, oh God,
and I was
why?
like, no, but it did light a fire. I was like, I'm getting this. This is mine. I know what I need to do. And if they don't like it, then like that's their loss, because they already built my costumes. So
correct. You're like, good luck hiring a seamstress to fit someone else. Yeah.
Right.
So okay, you move into the Cort. Do you have any memories about working at the unlucky theater that is the Cort?
Right. It is small, and the AC does not work well backstage. Yeah, it's really small. I mean, it's mostly made for plays. Yeah. And so they had to build out the basement for our swings. They had to build 2 new dressing rooms down there. And just for reference, I've always thought this was funny. Just for reference, the show in before us was, I think it was Sylvia, the go-to who was Sylvia with Matthew Broderick. Is that right? Was Matthew Broderick in that? Yeah. So the top floor was 5 ensemble men, Jeff Blumenkrantz and AJ in their own dressing room, and Rob Berman, our conductor, at the end of the hallway. 3 rooms. And that was Matthew's entire floor. Yep. And the ensemble men were in his napping room. So yeah, they had to put up a plexiglass divider next to my station because I was next to the sink and the water kept splashing me.
This is pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID. Yeah. We had plexiglass dividers. Yeah. So like, I mean, we're literally side by side. I sat next to Bill Humans, Broadway star. William
God, been in every
doctor in Wicked.
Yes, have been in everything.
Yeah, and behind me is Michael X. Martin, who's maybe has the most Broadway shows ever, like 19, 20, something like that. And then 2 other guys who are also making their Broadway debut. And yeah, I mean, it was cozy and it was hot, and I mean, Bright Star ended up being, because we kept switching between time periods, we had so many costume changes. And so we would like run on, push a house, run off, change clothes, run on, push a house, do a dance number, put on more clothes. And when there's no air conditioning, that was just wild. I mean, I looked very like svelte, and I had a great workout. And, you know, I was like, I slept very well.
It's worth it.
Yeah, I was like, I don't need to go to hot yoga anymore. Like, I literally do it nightly.
Yep, you're like every night, 8 p.m. I heard a story the other day of Gwen Verdon when she was doing Sweet Charity at the Palace in 1966. She showed up to a Wednesday matinee one day, and she had taped a thermometer to the backstage wall, and she would check how hot it was before every show. And if it was too hot, she would say, I'm not doing it. And she walked up one day on a Wednesday matinee, it was 106. And she was like, yeah, just cancel it. And they canceled the performance. She was like, I'm not doing it.
Good.
And you're like, can you imagine if you were just like, I don't feel like moving the house today. It's too hot. Let's cancel.
Yep, let's cancel.
Steve Martin's like, great.
Yeah.
So then the tumultuous lead up to the Tonys, where it was like the show wasn't selling well, but the rumors were Steve Martin's going to keep it open and just keep pumping money into it, because if you can make it to the Tonys, maybe you'll win a Tony Award. Talk to me about what it's like being in a new original musical that's not selling well, but has huge people attached, and the lead woman's getting huge acclaim. What was all of that like?
I mean, it was like, literally, I think if we picked any other year, we would be fine, but Hamilton was there. And it was just like, which I had seen, and I was like, oh, please don't open the same year as Hamilton. Like, please don't do it. And so to literally be the all white show,
great,
on the east side of Broadway was our demise. Like, it was just, it was sad. And and anyone that came to see it was just like, oh my God, what is this beautiful, like artistic, like it felt like masterful, and Carmen was just like she's so cool, and she's so like enigmatic and weird and like quirky, and you know, anyone that saw that performance, I don't think you'll ever forget that. No. And you know, luckily we had producers who were really transparent with us. And you know, we had a lot of meetings every week that was just kind of like a check-in where we are. And so every week it was kind of just like, are we going to close? Is this our week we're going to close? Is this the week we're going to close? Is this the week we're going to close? And I think we were all kind of holding out for the Tonys because I think with an original show and something as amazing as Carmen's Broadway debut, which is wild that was her debut.
That was her debut?
That was her debut. Oh yeah. She had only told,
yeah, I guess, because she Alphabet Tour, and I saw her in Carrie, but that was off Broadway.
Right. So yeah, my 2.5 years to wait to Broadway. Yeah,
correct. She was like, "Keep talking, Max. Keep telling me about how long you've waited."
So we all. I think like if you can walk away from something in the season, it's acknowledgement of that you can be one of those 5 nominated best musicals, that in a season with Hamilton, they can still recognize that there are other things going on besides this monolith that's like, amazing. Yeah. And I honestly think what ended up happening that year in theater is normal theater goers, people that travel to the city, or like rich people that see theater and have their assistants book them tickets. I think that year it was either you can see Hamilton or you can see all the nominated shows. Mm-hmm. Because if your theater budget was, $1,500, if you got 2 tickets to Hamilton, there it goes. Like if you wanted to see Hamilton before the Tonys, that's what you were spending your money on. And I think it was such a thing just to see Hamilton and to be seen at Hamilton.
Correct.
That people didn't. That's what that year became. It didn't become it wasn't go see all the Broadway shows. It was go see Hamilton, and that sucked. It was sad.
It feels like a once in every 25 years. They say the same thing happened at the Chorus Line in 75, where the original Chicago opened the same year, and they were like, no one cared because it wasn't a Chorus Line.
Whatever opened the same year as Producers. I'm sure there was something amazing there too. But
okay, so then you finally get your closing notice, and then fast forward for me to Sunday in the Park with George.
Sure. So that was like such a surprise dream gift. That started as a benefit concert at City Center.
Yeah.
That we did in the fall, and I just got a call to like fill out the ensemble basically because they just wanted a few more singers because to be honest, they hired amazing actors and they just wanted some voices, especially with a score like Sunday. It just needs to feel like glorious.
Yeah.
So I got a call to do that. And because we have books and things, they made a gag out of the 2 soldiers. I don't know if you're familiar with the show or our viewers are familiar with the show. So in the Seurat painting, there's two soldiers in the back. And the original gag was that one was a cardboard cutout. And
that's right.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't do anything. He's just always there with the other guy.
Always there with the other guy. It was literally a cutout that the soldier dragged around. And they had like a secret love affair, and he was mute, or this cardboard was mute.
As cardboard is.
Right. And so in this production, I was the human embodiment of the soldier. Excuse me. And so I ended up holding binders I held the binder for Clay Elder to read from. And it was funny. Like I was his prop music stand, essentially. Yeah. And that was our bit. And I sang in the back and I didn't say anything. I was mute. And then I magically sang. And then I remember Jake was like, I don't want this to end. And I remember like hearing that and being like, And then the call came to open up the Hudson Theater. And we were able to like fit in this tiny little slot before 1984.
Yeah.
Which was supposed to be the one to open it. And so we moved into the Hudson, and
I've spent the last year of my life in the Hudson building this Hudson Up Close tour. And
cool.
It's my new, other than Belasco, is my new favorite theater.
It's stunning. It's
stunning.
So
the history's crazy. The restoration was crazy. Yeah. And so what was it like to be a part of like the first show that?
It was really cool. We actually did. Did you talk to someone when you did did you do this for the Hudson?
What do you mean?
Like, did you do a S.N.O.B for the Hudson Theater yet?
We did. Yeah. The first, cool. We had Amber Ardolino from Head Over Heels.
Oh, cool. So we actually did something really cool that was spearheaded by Clay Elder.
Huh?
before the first performance, we went up to the balcony and we read the names of the cast of the last show that had ever done a show in the Hudson. And then we wrote all of our names on a piece of paper that we tucked in somewhere into the theater. Isn't that cool?
Wait. I've never heard this. You're blowing my mind right now. Is it still there?
I don't know. I mean, I actually don't even know where he put it, but
I'm gonna do some digging. When Broadway is like a thing and open, I'm literally there all the time.
I can connect you with Clay too if you want to.
Yeah. Let me.
And like I'm into like Palo Santo and sage and crystals. So I was like, yeah, Clay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Wow. We
I
kind of honored the last thing to be there because that theater sat empty for a long time. There were a lot of like bat mitzvahs there in the early 2000s, I think. It was like an event space or something.
Someone on our tour had their wedding there.
Of course. So I think, and then it was a TV studio for a while, right? And that was
TV studio, CBS, NBC Radio. Right. We do a whole hour, 45-minute tour. How long do you have? I can tell you everything it was about. Yeah, it's wild.
It was really cool, but they were not ready to house actors in that space. So we had some difficulties.
There was 27 of you, if I remember.
Yes, we had some difficulties. We were basically in like the undercarriage of the hotel. Like we were in the hotel space. It was not meant for us. It was not prepared for a wig room. And Annalie and Jake were like up in the catwalk in these little tiny rooms that were cool. And but it was just like, it was kind of just like guerrilla Broadway. We were like, let's do this, and we just put it up. And it was beautiful. I mean, beautiful. To be a part of that was just so. I'm just feel so fortunate, and I technically originated a role in a Sondheim musical.
Duh! You like put that right. That I think goes above the. I'm really good at teching house scenes. That goes above. I think.
And I think Equity came and saw the show, and I think by the last 2 weeks of the show, they had updated the playbill to actually list that I played what they're calling second soldier. So
for a
while it just said that I was in the ensemble, but I finally got my credit for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, rightfully so. Did Stephen Sondheim, he was there, he was around, did he have input? Did you meet him? Tell me everything.
Oh my God, that was also wild. Being at the Sitz Probe was when we met him.
Does everyone watching know Sitz Probe is like the first time we meet with the orchestra and literally sit and sing, I think is the German translation or something. Yeah. Sit and sing. And so Sitz Probe is like the most glorious moment of, you've just had a piano for 6 weeks and a drum kit, and now you have like the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's a Sitz Probe first Sunday in the park. So we're all like crying and Sondheim's sitting there. And something really interesting about our production is it was the first time that a live orchestra played the chromolume music. So in the second act, there's this art installation that George Seurat's Descendant does. And in the 80s, and I guess the last revival, the British transfer, they just played a track. But this was the first time that it was performed live. So Sondheim got to watch that, and I saw him taking little notes. And Michael Starobin was there.
Yeah.
And just learning about the history of that show. I mean, Janine Tesori was a producer on our concert and then became a producer on the show, but she was the music assistant at the Broadway Playwrights, Broadway original production. And she used to take the bus to Sondheim's house with the copies of the music and deliver it to his door. And here she is, ushering this piece into, you know what I mean? It was just wild. Wow. I'm sitting at a bar afterwards, just casually next to Sondheim and talking to Michael Starobin and, all these icons. And I'm that's probably Jake Gyllenhaal, whatever. I truly was so starstruck to just be in his presence. And I'm so grateful to have been able to do something with him. He's 90 now. So
yeah,
it's who knows if there'll be another
right. And he's the last connection to the golden age and old Broadway. Between him and Harold Prince, and it's with how Prince gone a year, It's like, it really is. It's like the last vestige. The closest I've ever come to Sondheim is we picked up our tickets to Harry Potter and the Cursed Child next to each other, and I almost touched his elbow. I was like, I have a ticket for Dolan, Tim. He was like, a ticket for Sondheim, Steven. I was like,
You're like,
he does exist. He's real.
Yeah.
So you're winning. You're definitely winning. That's
Well done.
crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
Tom, he says, fondest memory of Bright Star or Sunday in the Park with George. Do you have any like memories that stick out of your Broadway life?
I think Bright Star, as exciting as it was for me to make my Broadway debut, watching Carmen's journey is probably like the most inspiring thing from Bright Star. Like, watching her make her Broadway debut, watching her get a Tony nom, like gives me hope and joy. And when I think about Bright Star, like I think about her and how even the way we were in the show was always to support her character, and it was always to like push her along. And like, so every night was about Alice. It was about her. And it was never boring, and it was never unsatisfying. So I always think about her, I think. Yeah.
Wow. Crazy.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't talk about, because a couple of people have messaged us, and I think Tom, maybe it's Tom who's watching, saw it passing through at, was it at Goodspeed?
Goodspeed. Yeah. Yeah.
A couple people said, oh, Max Chernin from Bright Star. And people were like, but also passing through at Goodspeed.
Oh,
and I was like, really? And a couple people, and when that happens, the last time that happened was Hadestown, where a couple people came on a tour and were like, why don't you talk more about Hadestown? I was like, that thing at New York Theater Workshop?
Right.
Sure.
Right.
And then 8,000 years later, it comes to Broadway, and then people talk about it. It was Tom. He says, you were so good in passing through last year at Goodspeed. Are there any plans to move that show forward, COVID aside?
I know it's not dead. And I honestly think that right now it's better for a show to be kind of in a developmental phase. Like, it would be such a bummer if we had announced a production, or if we had money in something going on. So I know it's not dead. It's a beautiful, beautiful show. And that was a dream come true. I mean, that's like the first time I really got to lead a show. Yeah. I don't think it's dead. I think it's going to happen. We did this awesome, quarantine concert that's actually on Playbill, if you're interested.
Sure.
It's like half hour of music from the show.
Okay.
I don't know if you know what it's about. It's about,
I don't.
It's based on a true story about a young man who walked across the country from Philadelphia to San Francisco. And he wrote a memoir. And our two writers, Eric Uola, who's a Broadway actor, and they both are, and Brett Ryback, they heard about him on a podcast and wrote it into a musical. Wow. And it's really beautiful and really timely. It's set in 2011. So just seeing what it's like for someone to walk across the country and connect with people back then, 9 years ago, like where we are now and where we were then, it's beautiful. It's like just a beautiful story about, what's going on in our country at very base forms. Because what he did is it was called Walking to Listen. So he set out to find himself, and he really was kind of collecting people's stories. And, from all of that, I found himself on this journey that he took. So like, it's beautiful.
Wow.
And,
that sounds like my life. That's like me walking on tours and collecting stories of people all over and just talking. And it is, walking tours have become kind of like, they're in, because you put your phone in your pocket for an hour and 45 minutes and you just tell stories and you talk to humans. Yeah. And people are like, how do you, like, you're on social media a lot. How do you, like, does that ruin your life? And I was like, oh no, every day for 2 hours, it goes in my pocket and I'm not on the internet. I'm just connected to a human in front of me. And it's like it's unplugging every day with people. And people say, oh, do people pull out their phones on tour? And I was like, no, for 2 hours. I don't talk about phones, and people they watch, like when they see a show, for the most part, unless they're annoying and we hate them. But they just put their phone away, and it's a pretty magical thing. Presumably you play the guy who walks from Coast
I
to
do,
coast?
yes. And I got to meet him. He came to see the show.
Wow.
And that was wild. I went on a hike with the guy that I played, and we connected.
You went on a hike with him?
Oh, yeah. And he was barefoot because he was breaking in his summer feet. And we went on a hike, and we sat on a cliff, and we talked about our lives. And that ended up informing my performance a little bit, because I was I was like, I'm going to observe his body language a little bit. And some of the things he did, I was like, oh, I got to put this in the show. Like, before he left, he's like very, he's a little like, he lights some sage and had some crystals too.
Well, yeah, he walked across the country and he's walking his summer feet.
So before we left, he like put his hand on my heart, and I put my hand on his heart, and he was like, this is really meaningful or whatever. And I ended up putting that in the show with the way that I connected with my father. Right? I was like, I want to try this. This feels like a good thing for everyone, but also like it's an Andrew thing. And that was it was a magical experience.
Wow.
Yeah, I hope it lives on. I think
for sure. It sounds like it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so we'll keep an eye out for that. You've been awesome. Thank you for this.
Totally.
How should people, if they want to follow your journey, other than going to Playbill and watching those clips, are you Instagram? Are you TikTok? Are you Twitter? How should we do all of those things?
I'm on Instagram at Max Chern, CHERNS.
Great.
I also have a website, maxchernin.com, and that has all the links and things
I
too.
love that.
Yeah, and I've been posting the random the quarantine, the things I do here on this wall with my light,
Yes.
with an audio track, trying to count what I'm doing. So
yep, that sounds about right. Sounds like 2020 in the year of our lives.
Correct.
You've been incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Good luck with the rest of quarantine, and maybe we'll see each other eventually in Times Square in person in real life form.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. You're incredible. And good luck with everything.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Bye, Max.
Bye.
Isn't he wonderful? He's so cool. And you'll go and you'll watch videos, because what else do you have to do on Saturday other than hang out with me and Max? And now you should go watch his videos. He's talented. I mean, of course, you can just tell the quiet confidence of talent brings to an actor. But his voice is beautiful, and it does a whole bunch of it's incredible. So you should go watch those videos. And I hope you had a good time. For those who don't follow us on social media, why don't you follow us on social media? We just launched last night our new masks. I genuinely, the first joke I ever made to my staff when all of this went down on March 12th, I said, like, are we going to sell Broadway masks? And we all laughed. And then 5 months later, I was like, I think we have to sell Broadway masks. I think this is like not, COVID is here, masks are a thing. And so we took our Broadway sign and we made it into a textile that I love. And so once we had a textile that I loved, I said, okay, we can do that. And so this is our Broadway mask that's available on our website. We also launched our custom keychains, magnets situation, which is take any ticket stub and we'll convert it into a souvenir gift for you. So you can find that on our website as well. All of this in my life is on our website at broadwayupclose.com/souvenirs. You can also see everything, all of our products and things are on Instagram and tagged there. For more information about us, follow us on social media at Broadway Up Close, on Instagram, Facebook. And then every week, we take the entire week's videos from that theater that week, this week being the Cort, and we drop those on our YouTube page. So if you go and subscribe to our YouTube page, you'll get an email notification every Sunday. If you miss one along the week, if you miss our interview with on Saturday, all of that is packaged for you in one nice binge-worthy moment on YouTube. You guys have been awesome. Thanks for joining us at this new different time at noon instead of 6 p.m. You now have the rest of your day to go watch videos of Max and buy Broadway masks and ticket stubs for me. You guys have been wonderful. I hope you have a wonderful Saturday, and we'll see you on Monday for our next theater. It's one of Broadway's luckiest, the first theater to open in 1913, named after the original owner, and it's had the same name for 107 years. So that's all the hints I'll give you. We will see you Monday for that, and thanks for joining us. One day closer to Broadway. Bye, guys.